I mean, what does that bring up for you, Matt? I'm sure you have so many questions because you and I are essentially newer to filmmaking. I've been in the entertainment and impact industry. You come from tech and finance, but you've gotten involved in the last few years in some pretty disruptive models like Angel, and you've been an executive producer and now co-founder of this first of its kind venture capital-based nonprofit fund. But what questions does that bring up for you, for Patrick?
Well, it's kind of, the questions on everyone's mind is like, how are we going to get it back? What's the pathway, right? So and again, Lindsay's right. I'm sort of new, right? As I looked at the financial models for film, especially independent film, I'm like sort of looking at it from a perspective of just general business, going like, wow, this is pretty risky. This is really expensive, So I've got my own ideas, that kind of like from an outsider, right? Mm-hmm. Like looking in as like, we've really got to figure out how to do a better job on taking more swings, more at bats, lower, but high quality production, but lower cost and leveraging some of the technology. But be more interested, from kind of an insider, what you think it's going to take to kind of pull out of the bit of the funk that we're in here.
I say this line over and over again is where there's chaos, there's also opportunity. Where you look at sort of the traditional media giants, the Warner Brothers studios, the massive, media conglomerates, and a lot of them are just kind of weighed down by their communication means, which are kind of outdated, like cable channels. Now, Warner Brothers Discovery, all the Discovery cable channels aren't worth what they were when they bought them. So meanwhile, you have a Netflix, which is not tied down traditionally, and they're flying. But, I think the question you have to always be asking is what's after Netflix? These lions, they don't stay on top forever. In terms of also streaming, everybody looks at Netflix, but they don't even look at YouTube, which has twice the amount of subscribers that Netflix does. Some say it's like YouTube's already won the war before Netflix has even gotten to second base. But the way that we're consuming media, and the fact that there's been a lot of, I call it regurgitation in Hollywood, where we're seeing, people are taking the safe bets, they're risk averse, they're making the third or fourth sequel, and people are still eating from the same plate, but the meal's starting to get tired. Mm-hmm. Audiences always want to crave something. They always want to be taken on a story. It's why Sinners was so successful this film year, because finally everybody just got this like organic experience of something new. And that really is what drives audiences. And as somebody who's worked in unscripted for such a long time, a budget, I find, doesn't necessarily have to restrain you. And some people are kind of hesitant about that because they're in the film industry. I was talking to a filmmaker and they're like, I need $2 million to make a movie. And I said, well, I did a show on $30,000 an episode, and it airs at 8 p.m. prime time just next to your scripted show that cost $2 to $3 million an episode. If you know how to tell a story, and you know how to tell it well, then you know how to captivate your audience, and you're making a project that is based on passion, based on love, based on you want to do it.